The morning sun rose over the tall walls of the Royal Training Grounds. Soldiers were already awake, lined up for drills, their boots striking the ground in rhythm. Among them stood a young guard named Arin. He wore the plain uniform of the palace guard, his rifle resting on his shoulder. To most of the men around him, Arin was quiet, almost too quiet, and they thought he lacked spirit. Few cared to speak with him, and many had made a habit of mocking him. The shooting range was set up behind the barracks. Wooden targets stood in a row, painted circles marking the center. The guards often gathered there after duty, not only to train but also to show off their skills. Loud voices, laughter, and challenges filled the air whenever the range was open. That day was no different. Arin walked toward the range carrying his rifle with calm steps. His face showed no pride, no worry, and no excitement. He simply moved as if it was just another part of his daily routine. The other guards noticed him and grinned. One of them, a tall man named Bren, called out with a mocking voice, "Look who has come to miss the target again. Careful, everyone, Arin might hit the grass instead of the board." The men around laughed. Arin only gave a small nod and placed his rifle on the bench. He began checking it with steady hands. His silence only fueled their amusement. Another guard, a broad-shouldered man named Darren, shook his head. "He is hopeless. I wonder why the captain keeps him in the unit. A guard who cannot shoot is like a sword with no edge." The men laughed louder. Arin, however, did not raise his head or answer back. His movements were slow but careful as he loaded his weapon. Some of the guards began taking their turns at the targets. Shots rang out one after another, and cheers rose when a bullet struck near the center. The men clapped each other on the back, showing pride in their aim. When Arin finally stepped up, silence spread for a moment. Everyone watched with smirks on their faces. The quiet guard was their favorite target for jokes, and they wanted to see him fail again. Arin raised his rifle, took position, and aimed down the range. His breathing was calm, his eyes focused, and his finger rested lightly on the trigger. The first shot cracked through the air. The bullet struck the outer ring of the target, far from the center. Laughter exploded behind him. Bren clapped his hands together in mock praise. "Well done, Arin. You nearly scared the paint off the board." Arin did not move. He reloaded smoothly and fired again. This time the shot landed closer to the center, but still not enough to silence the laughter. The guards shook their heads and whispered to each other about how useless he was. To them, it was proof that he did not belong among soldiers. What none of them knew was that Arin's mind was not on the board in front of him. His eyes saw the target, but in his thoughts he pictured another range far away, a range known only to a few men in the kingdom. Years before, Arin had trained in secret under a special unit, a unit that did not exist on paper. He had been one of their best, a shadow among soldiers. The name of that unit was whispered in fear and respect. It was the Special Air Service, the SAS. Arin had once been their deadliest sniper. His skill had been proven on missions that were never recorded, in places no one would ever speak of. But now, here at the Palace Guard Range, he wore the mask of a simple soldier. He allowed the others to think he was weak, to laugh at him, and to forget him. For Arin, that was safer. The guards behind him only saw a man who could not shoot straight. They had no idea that he could, if he wished, put a bullet through the smallest crack of a moving target at a distance they could not even dream of. They had no idea that the man they mocked could change the outcome of a battle with a single pull of his trigger. As Arin lowered his rifle, Bren stepped forward and slapped him on the shoulder. "Better luck next time, friend. Maybe tomorrow you will hit the center by mistake." The laughter returned. Arin gave a small smile, one that did not reach his eyes. He packed his weapon and turned away. The day would go on, the guards would continue their games, and he would remain the quiet one. No one there understood that the man they mocked was more dangerous than all of them combined. The secret of Arin's true past remained hidden, waiting for the moment when it would no longer be a secret. The palace courtyard was alive with movement as the day went on. Messengers hurried across the stone paths, servants carried supplies, and guards stood watch at every gate. Arin was among them, standing at his post near the eastern wall. His back was straight, his face calm, and his eyes scanned the crowd with steady focus. To anyone passing by, he looked like just another palace guard doing his duty. But even while standing still, Arin's mind never rested. He noticed details others ignored. The way a stranger's cloak moved, the pattern of footsteps on the ground, the faint glimmer of metal hidden under cloth. His training had sharpened his senses far beyond the average soldier, but he never showed it openly. He stayed quiet, blending into the background, letting others think he was ordinary. A group of guards walked past him, laughing loudly. Bren and Darren were among them. They noticed Aaron at his post and could not resist another remark. "Careful, Aaron," Bren said with a grin. "If an enemy shows up, don't aim at him. You might miss and hit the wall instead." The men laughed again, shaking their heads as they walked on. Aaron did not answer. He had grown used to their words. What they never understood was that he allowed their laughter. He wanted them to underestimate him. It gave him cover, like shadows on a battlefield. Later that afternoon, the captain of the guard called for a special drill. All the men gathered in the courtyard where wooden dummies had been placed in rows. The captain, a stern man named Rovan, stood before them with arms crossed. His voice carried across the yard. "We train today because the kingdom faces danger. Reports say spies have entered the city. If they aim for the palace, it will be on us to protect it. I expect sharp eyes and steady hands." The guards nodded, some with pride, some with nerves. They picked up practice weapons and prepared for the drill. Rovan gave the signal and the men charged forward. Wooden blades clashed against the dummies, shields raised and lowered, shouts filled the air. It was a test of coordination and strength. Aaron moved with the group, his steps smooth and measured. While others shouted and swung with force, Aaron's strikes were quiet but precise. His blade cut exactly where it needed to. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Yet his calm style made him appear slower than the rest. To the eyes of his comrades, it seemed he lacked passion. They did not notice that every strike he made was on the weakest part of the dummy, where a real opponent would fall instantly. After the drill, Rovan walked among the men, giving comments. He praised Bren's energy and Darren's strength. When he reached Aaron, he only gave a short nod. "Steady enough," the captain said, moving on. Aaron did not mind. Praise was not what he sought. When the drill ended, the guards gathered again at the range. They were eager to compete, to prove who had the best aim. Bren boasted loudly that he would hit the bullseye 3 times in a row. Darren claimed he could beat him. The men cheered and placed small bets of coins or favors. The air was full of excitement. Aaron stood to the side, cleaning his rifle. He did not step forward, but soon Bren called to him. "Come on, Aaron, show us how to graze the outer ring again." "We could use a good laugh." The others laughed, urging him to join. Aaron gave a quiet nod and walked to the line. He raised his rifle, aimed, and fired. The shot landed near the edge again, just as they expected. The men burst into laughter, some even clapping their hands. But while they laughed, Aaron adjusted the scope slightly, his eyes narrowing. He fired again, this time hitting closer to the center. The laughter softened, but still they smirked. Only Captain Rovan, watching from behind, frowned slightly. He had noticed something in the way Aaron handled the rifle. The calm breathing, the steady trigger pull, the controlled posture. It was not the style of a careless guard. It was something else, something he could not yet place. But before he could think further, the drill ended and the men went back to their duties. As night fell over the palace, the torches were lit along the walls. The city outside grew quiet, but unease lingered in the air. Spies had indeed entered the kingdom, and danger was closer than anyone thought. The guards went to their posts, unaware of what awaited them. Aaron stood once again at his position by the eastern wall. His eyes scanned the shadows beyond the gate. The laughter of the day was gone, replaced by silence. Deep inside, Aaron knew the time was coming when his mask would fall, and the truth of who he really was would no longer stay hidden. The moon was high above the palace when the night grew quiet. Most of the city slept, but the guards remained awake at their posts. Torches burned along the walls, and the soft sound of boots moving on stone echoed across the grounds. Aaron stood near the eastern gate, his eyes sharp as he watched the dark streets beyond. Unlike the others, he did not grow restless or tired. He was patient, and patience had always been his strongest weapon. Far on the edge of the city, silent figures moved through the shadows. They wore dark clothing, their faces hidden, their steps light as cats. These were the spies the captain had warned about. Their mission was clear: reach the palace, learn its weaknesses, and if possible, strike where it would hurt most. They thought the guards would be simple men, easy to fool, easy to avoid. What they did not know was that one man among those guards had faced dangers far greater than them. At the eastern wall, Bren yawned and leaned on his spear. "Nothing ever happens here," he muttered. Darren agreed, stretching his arms. "Spies or no spies, no one would dare to come near the palace. It is waste of time to stand here." They spoke carelessly, not noticing Aaron beside them, still scanning the dark. He did not answer their words, but he had already noticed a flicker of movement near the far end of the street. Aaron's eyes narrowed. He shifted slightly, pretending to adjust his rifle. In truth, he was focusing on the shadows, counting the number of figures he saw. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 intruders moving with skill, thinking they were unseen. His heart stayed calm, his breathing steady. He had dealt with numbers far greater than this in the past. Suddenly, a faint clink of metal echoed from the street. Bren looked up and frowned. "Did you hear that?" Darren shrugged. "Probably a rat." But Aaron knew better. He raised his rifle, aiming carefully. Without a word, he fired. The bullet struck the cobblestone inches away from the nearest intruder. The spies froze, realizing they had been seen. Bren jumped in shock. "What are you doing, Aaron?" "You missed again," he shouted. But before his words could continue, the shadows broke into motion. The spies rushed forward, pulling small blades from their belts. The alarm bells began to ring as other guards noticed the attack. Chaos broke out near the eastern gate. Bren and Darren raised their weapons clumsily, shouting in fear as the spies leapt from the shadows. But Aaron was already moving. His rifle cracked again, and one spy fell to the ground before reaching the wall. He shifted his aim quickly, firing again, dropping another before the man could throw his blade. The guards stared in shock. Bren's jaw fell open. He hit them. He actually hit them. Darren swung his spear at the third spy, but his strike was clumsy. The intruder dodged easily and rushed toward him. Before the blade could land, Aaron's rifle spoke once more, striking the attacker down with perfect precision. The last spy turned to flee, but Aaron's calm eyes followed him. A single shot rang out and the man collapsed in the dust. Silence followed, broken only by the echo of the last shot. The bells stopped and more guards came running to the scene, weapons raised. They saw the fallen intruders, their dark clothes clear in the torchlight. Captain Roven pushed through the crowd, his eyes wide. "What happened here?" Bren pointed at Aaron, his face pale. "It was him, Captain, Aaron. He shot them all." The guards looked at the quiet man in disbelief. Aaron lowered his rifle and stood still, his face calm as ever. He did not speak, he did not boast. He simply watched the captain with steady eyes. Roven studied him closely. He had noticed before that Aaron's movements were not ordinary. Now he was certain. This was no simple guard. The precision, the calm, the speed of his shots, it was the mark of a soldier trained far beyond normal men. Yet the captain did not speak his thoughts aloud. Instead, he nodded slowly. "Well done, Aaron. You saved the gate tonight," the other guards murmured, some in shock, some in shame. Bren and Darren avoided Aaron's eyes, their laughter of the day suddenly gone. For the first time, they saw him not as a joke, but as something else entirely. Yet even then, they could not imagine the full truth. They did not know that the man before them was once the deadliest sniper of the SAS, a ghost of the battlefield who had chosen to live in silence. As the bodies of the spies were carried away, the palace settled again. But word of the night's events would spread quickly. Whispers would rise, questions would grow, and the mask Aaron wore would soon begin to crack. For now he returned to his post, silent as always, his rifle resting at his side. The next morning, the palace was alive with talk. News of the night attack had spread through every corner of the guard barracks. Men gathered in small groups, whispering about what had happened at the eastern gate. Some spoke of spies in the dark, others spoke of the shots that had stopped them, but the name on every tongue was Aaron's. Bren sat at a wooden table with Darren, both men looking uneasy. Bren shook his head as if trying to make sense of it. "I saw it with my own eyes. He shot them down one after another. It was like he knew where they would move before they even stepped." Darren frowned. "But how? Yesterday he could not even hit the center of the board. Maybe we were wrong about him." The men around them listened closely. Some nodded, some doubted, but none could deny what had happened. Aaron had done what no one expected, and the memory of it weighed heavy on their minds. For years they had mocked him, but now they were unsure if he was the fool they believed or something far more dangerous. At the far end of the room, Aaron sat alone. He ate quietly, his eyes lowered, showing no pride in what he had done. To him it was just another duty. But the glances from the other guards did not escape his notice. He felt their eyes on him, some filled with respect, some with suspicion. He did not mind. He had lived with such looks before. Later that day, Captain Rovan summoned Arin to his office. The room was plain, with maps on the walls and a heavy wooden desk at the center. Rovan sat behind it, his sharp eyes studying Arin as he entered. The captain's voice was calm but firm. "Close the door." Arin obeyed, standing straight before him. Rovan leaned forward. "I have been in the guard for 20 years. I know the difference between luck and skill. What you did last night was not luck. Those were shots only a trained marksman could make. Tell me, Arin, who are you really?" Arin did not answer at once. His face was steady, his eyes thoughtful. He had hidden his past for so long, and now the question stood directly before him. At last he spoke, his voice quiet. "I am a guard of the palace, Captain." Nothing more. Rovan studied him in silence. He knew Arin was not telling the full truth, but he also knew forcing him would bring nothing. Finally, the captain nodded. "Very well. If that is the answer you give, I will not press further. But understand this. The palace is in danger, and men like you are needed. If trouble comes again, I expect you to stand as you did last night." Arin gave a single nod. "I will." When he left the office, Arin felt a weight on his shoulders. He had kept his secret once more, but he knew it could not remain hidden forever. The attack of the spies was only the beginning. Shadows were moving in the city, and the palace was their goal. He could sense it, the same way he had once sensed danger on battlefields far away. That evening, drills were held again at the shooting range. The guards gathered, eager to test themselves after hearing the stories. Some tried harder than before, pushing their limits, wanting to prove they were not weak compared to Arin. Bren fired with all his strength, hitting the center twice, and lifted his arms in pride. But when Arin stepped forward, silence filled the air. He raised his rifle and fired once. The bullet struck the very center of the target. He fired again, another bullseye. A third shot followed, and once more the center was pierced. The guards stared, their mouths open as the truth struck them at last. This was no clumsy guard. This was a master. Bren lowered his head, shame rising in his chest. The laughter he once used now felt hollow. Darren crossed his arms, his face pale, unable to meet Arin's eyes. The other men whispered, their voices filled with awe. For the first time, there was no mockery, only silence and respect. Arin cleaned his rifle calmly as if nothing unusual had happened. He did not seek praise, he did not smile at their shock. He simply returned to his place, blending into the background once more. But the truth had begun to spread. His skill could no longer be hidden. Far beyond the palace walls, in the dark corners of the city, the surviving allies of the fallen spies heard of their failure. They spoke in low voices of the guard who had shot their men down with deadly precision. To them, this was no ordinary palace soldier. He was a threat, one they would soon have to face. The days that followed were tense in the palace. The guards doubled their patrols, and the gates were watched more closely. The failed attack had left everyone uneasy. Whispers of more spies and hidden threats spread through the barracks. No one knew when the next strike would come, but all felt it was only a matter of time. Arin remained quiet through it all. He stood at his post, trained at the range, and followed orders as always. But inside he watched and listened carefully. He had seen enough in his past life to know that one failed attempt never ended the danger. If enemies had sent spies once, they would try again. This time they would come with greater strength. At the same time, the way the guards treated Arin began to change. Bren no longer mocked him in public, though his pride still made it hard for him to show respect. Darren avoided him, ashamed of his past insults. Other guards gave Arin small nods, a quiet sign that they recognized his skill. The laughter that once followed him was gone, replaced by silence and curiosity. One evening, Captain Rovan called a meeting of the guard leaders. Arin was asked to attend, though it was unusual for a soldier of his rank. The captain spread a map on the table, pointing to marks around the city. Our scouts report strange movements. Unknown groups gathering in abandoned houses near the marketplace and by the northern river. I believe another attack is coming, larger than before. The men around the table exchanged worried looks. Bren spoke with uncertainty. If they attack in large numbers, the guard may not be enough to hold them. Rovan nodded. That is why we must prepare wisely. We cannot defend the palace by strength alone. We must use skill. His eyes fell on Arin. You proved your aim at the gate. I need you to take position on the high tower during the next patrol. From there, you will see farther than any man below. If trouble comes, you will signal and strike first. Aaron gave a simple nod. Understood, Captain. His calm answer gave no hint of pride, but the men around him felt the weight of his presence. They now knew his hands could decide the fate of the palace. That night, Aaron climbed the tall stone tower at the eastern wall. From the top, he could see the city spread out under the moonlight. The rooftops glimmered faintly, and the narrow streets looked like dark veins cutting through the land. His rifle rested against his shoulder, his eye scanning through the scope. Every shadow, every flicker of movement he watched with patient care. Hours passed in silence. The guards below grew restless, but Aaron did not move. His training had taught him the value of stillness. A sniper was not just a shooter. He was a hunter who waited for the right moment. And then, near the northern street, he saw it. A small group moving together, too quiet, too careful. Not ordinary townsfolk. He counted 6 figures. Aaron's heart stayed steady. He adjusted his rifle, exhaled slowly, and fired. The crack of the shot echoed across the rooftops. One figure fell, the others scattered in panic. Shouts rose from the streets below as the palace alarm was sounded again. Guards rushed to their posts, swords drawn, while Aaron fired again. Another intruder dropped, his fall hidden in the dark alley. The surviving 4 tried to flee, but they could not escape the eyes above them. Aaron tracked them one by one, his shots striking with deadly accuracy. By the time the guards reached the alley, only silence remained. The enemies lay defeated, their plans broken once more. Captain Roven arrived at the base of the tower, calling up to him. "Aaron, report." Aaron descended with calm steps, his rifle still warm in his hands. 6 intruders. None escaped. His voice was simple, without boast. The captain's eyes narrowed, but he nodded in approval. "Good work. You saved us again." The guards who had once laughed at him now looked at him with awe. Bren muttered under his breath, "He is no ordinary man." Darren only stared in silence. They were beginning to realize that the quiet guard they had mocked was the shield standing between the palace and its enemies. As dawn broke, the bodies of the intruders were examined. Strange symbols were found on their clothing, marks of an unknown order. Roven frowned as he studied them. "This is no simple band of spies. This is organized, dangerous, and it will not end here." Aaron listened quietly, but in his heart he already knew. The attacks were building toward something greater. He had seen this pattern before, in other lands, in other wars. The shadows would not stop until their true plan was revealed, and when that moment came, his hidden past would no longer be a secret he could keep. The city was quiet as night fell again, but the tension hung heavier than before. The guards had doubled their patrols and torches burned brighter along the palace walls. Aaron moved among them, silent and alert, observing every movement and listening to every sound. The previous attacks had taught him that danger rarely came announced. It came hidden in the shadows. Bren and Darren walked beside him on the eastern wall, their steps uncertain. Bren whispered, "Do you think more will come tonight?" Aaron did not answer. He had no need to speak. His eyes scanned the distant rooftops, the narrow alleys, and the dark corners where trouble could hide. Patience, he knew, was the greatest weapon a guard could have. Hours passed, and still nothing appeared. Some of the younger guards grew restless, shifting their weight and murmuring complaints. Aaron watched them calmly, his mind focused on the night beyond the walls. He could feel it in the air, the way shadows moved, the silence that was too deep. Something was coming. Soon. Suddenly, from the far northern street, a faint glimmer of movement caught his eye. At first it seemed like nothing, but then he saw it again. Figures moving with caution in pairs, disappearing behind corners and walls. Aaron counted them. 12. More than the last group, and this time they carried small weapons and tools. They were clearly scouts sent to gather information before a larger strike. Aaron signaled to the captain below. The torches flashed in response, alerting the guards to the threat. Everyone froze, listening as the first sounds of the intruders' movement reached them. Then, without hesitation, Aaron raised his rifle. His breathing was steady, his finger light on the trigger. He had faced situations like this before, in lands far from the palace, under conditions far worse than these. His skill was not in speed, but in precision. The first shot rang out. One intruder fell silently, and the others froze. Aaron adjusted his aim, tracking each figure as they moved. Another shot and another. The guards below were astonished. They had never seen someone fire with such control. Every strike was calculated, every bullet precise. By the time the intruders realized they had been targeted, Half of them were already down. Bren could barely hold his spear steady. "How is he doing this?" he muttered. Darren whispered, "He is not like us. He is different." Indeed, the difference was clear. While other guards acted with noise and force, Aaron acted with quiet efficiency. Each shot brought a threat to an end before it could grow into a danger. The remaining intruders tried to scatter, but the layout of the streets worked against them. Aaron's calm eyes followed their every movement. His next shots were perfect, hitting targets that others would have missed. One by one, the intruders fell, their plans crumbling in the moonlight. By the time the palace alarm called the rest of the guards into action, the threat was already neutralized. When the battle ended, the streets were quiet again. The surviving intruders fled, disappearing into the shadows. Captain Rovan arrived at the tower and looked at Arin, his face serious. "You did it again," he said. "Even when they came in numbers, you managed to stop them. How do you do it?" Arin lowered his rifle, his calm expression unchanged. "I watch, Captain. I wait. Then I act." It was a simple answer, but the truth behind it ran deeper than words could describe. Years of training, years of missions that no one knew about had prepared him for moments like this. The palace was safe, but he knew the danger was far from over. The other guards, who had once mocked him, now looked at him with awe. Bren avoided his eyes, unable to speak, while Darren simply nodded silently. Respect had replaced their laughter, and a quiet fear lingered. They understood that Aaron was more than a guard. He was a shield against enemies they could barely imagine. As dawn approached, Aaron returned to his post on the wall. The first rays of sunlight lit the city, but he remained alert, scanning for any sign of movement. He knew the night had been only a part of the greater danger to come. The spies, their allies, and unknown enemies would not stop until they had found a way into the palace. And when they did, Aaron would be ready. He thought about the secrets he had carried all these years. His identity as one of the deadliest snipers in the SAS was still hidden from everyone here. For now it remained his secret, a weapon he had yet to reveal fully. But soon the time would come when silence would not be enough. Shadows were gathering, and the palace would face challenges unlike any it had seen before. Aaron's skills would be tested to their limits, and the mask of a simple guard would no longer protect him. For now, he waited, calm and silent. The palace slept under his watch, but the storm was coming, and when it arrived, only those who were ready would survive. Days passed quietly, but tension lingered in the palace. Every guard felt it, though none could say why. Aaron continued his routine, standing at his post, training at the range, and observing quietly. The attacks had stopped for now, but he knew that peace in the city was fragile. Danger always returned to places like this. Captain Rovan called a meeting of the guard leaders once again. The room was filled with maps, reports, and diagrams. "Our scouts report increased activity in the northern districts," he said. "It is clear the enemy is planning something bigger. We must be ready, not just to defend the palace, but to strike first if necessary." His eyes moved to Aaron. "And we will need your skill. You must be prepared to act when the time comes." Aaron nodded, calm as ever. He did not speak of his past, did not boast about his ability. He simply understood the task ahead. His experience in the SAS had taught him more than any training within the palace walls. Strategy, patience, precision, these were his tools, and he would use them to protect the kingdom, silently and efficiently. That night, the palace was unusually quiet. Aaron took position on the highest tower. The city spread below him like a map. He studied every alley, every rooftop, every shadow. Hours passed without incident, but he remained alert. His senses were sharp, ready to detect the smallest movement. Every rustle of cloth, every glint of metal, every whisper of sound could be the first sign of danger. Near midnight, movement appeared near the northern river. Aaron's eyes narrowed. A small boat floated quietly, carrying 6 figures. They climbed the riverbank, careful not to make noise. Aaron counted them and recognized the formation immediately. These were not ordinary thieves or wanderers. They moved like trained soldiers, disciplined and cautious. They were scouting the palace, preparing for a coordinated strike. Without hesitation, Aaron aimed. He fired a single shot, hitting the first intruder in a precise spot that would stop him without alerting the others immediately. Chaos did not erupt yet. The remaining men froze, unsure of what had happened. Aaron adjusted his aim quickly, taking down the second and third intruders with careful precision. Their comrades panicked, trying to scatter in the darkness, but Aaron's skill made escape impossible. Each shot hit exactly where it needed to. The guards below rushed toward the northern river, guided by the sound of the shots. Bren and Darren ran alongside others, astonished at the effectiveness of Aaron's fire. "He is unstoppable," Bren whispered, breathless. Darren nodded silently, unable to find words. They had witnessed his skill before, but now it was clear that he was far beyond any of them. Captain Roven arrived at the riverbank with a few senior guards. They found 3 intruders fallen and motionless, while the remaining 3 had fled in panic. The battle had lasted only minutes, but it had prevented what could have been a serious threat to the palace. Roven looked toward the tower. Aaron had already disappeared from view, returning to his usual quiet watch. The captain's face was serious. "He is more than a guard. He is a shield we cannot replace." The surviving intruders returned to their allies, shaken and angry. They spoke of the guard who had struck with deadly accuracy, who moved unseen and acted with unmatched skill. Among their ranks, fear grew. They had underestimated the palace guard, and now they would pay the price of their arrogance. Rumors of Aaron's ability began to spread beyond the city, reaching ears that would remember his name with caution. The next morning, Aaron stood once again at his post. The streets were calm, the city seemingly safe. Bren avoided looking at him, still uneasy from the night before. Darren gave him a small nod of respect, the first true sign of acknowledgement. Other guards whispered among themselves, speaking of the quiet man who had saved them repeatedly. Yet Aaron remained humble, silent and composed as he always did. Captain Roven called him once more. "You have saved the palace twice in as many nights. Soon the enemy will act with greater force. Be ready, Aaron. Your skill may be the difference between victory and disaster." Aaron gave a quiet nod. No words were needed. He understood. The coming days would test him in ways even the SAS had not prepared him for. Aaron looked out over the palace walls, the city beyond, and the shadows that crept in the night. The mask of the ordinary guard had served him well, but soon his true power would be revealed fully. And when it was, no enemy would dare challenge the walls he defended. The night air was thick with tension as the palace prepared for the worst. Word had spread that a larger force of enemies was moving closer, their numbers far greater than any previous attempt. The city was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the streets themselves were holding their breath. Inside the walls, every guard was alert, and Captain Roven moved among them, checking positions and giving final instructions. Aaron stood silently at the highest tower once again. His rifle rested on the ledge, and his eyes scanned every shadow, every rooftop, and every street. He had already faced scouts in small groups, but this was different. This was the real threat. His calm demeanor masked the intensity of his focus. He knew the enemies would try everything to reach the palace, but he had learned long ago that patience, precision, and careful observation could overcome even the strongest of foes. Below him, Bren and Darren prepared the gates. Their hands shook slightly as they loaded weapons and checked armor. The men remembered the attacks of the past nights, and though fear lingered, respect for Aaron had replaced their doubt. Bren glanced up at the tower. "I hope he is ready," he muttered. Darren only nodded. The first movement appeared near the northern district. Shadows shifted along the walls, and figures crept toward the palace in coordinated silence. Aaron counted at least 20 intruders, armed and organized. The attackers moved with purpose, showing the skill of trained soldiers. The city streets had become a path of danger, but Aaron's eyes were steady. He adjusted his rifle, taking careful aim at the nearest target. The first shot rang out quiet and precise. One enemy fell without warning, the others freezing in confusion. Aaron fired again, then again, striking with deadly accuracy. Each shot disrupted the attackers' formation, forcing them to scatter and change direction. Below, the palace guards moved to intercept, but Aaron remained the unseen force guiding the defense. The intruders tried to regroup near the eastern gate. Captain Roven shouted orders, but even he could not match the control Aaron had over the battlefield. With every movement of the enemy, Aaron anticipated, calculated, and acted. Bullets struck exactly where they needed to, disabling the attackers one by one. The once confident invaders now stumbled in panic, unable to predict the silent marksman above. Bren watched in disbelief as Aaron worked. "He is incredible," he whispered. Aaron's eyes were wide. I have never seen anyone like him. The men who had mocked Aaron at the range now realized that they had been standing beside a legend in plain sight. As the night wore on, the final wave of enemies attempted a direct assault on the main gate. Aaron had already adjusted his aim for long-range shots. His bullet struck with perfect timing, taking down attackers before they could even reach the walls. The defenders on the ground rallied, inspired by the calm efficiency of the sniper above. With Aaron's guidance, they pushed the remaining enemies back into the streets, forcing them to retreat into the darkness. When the battle ended, silence returned. The city was safe once more, the palace intact and the intruders gone. Guards gathered, breathing heavily, looking up toward the tower where Aaron had stood. Captain Rovan arrived first, his face showing both relief and awe. "You have done it again, Aaron. You saved the palace, the city, and every one of us inside these walls." Aaron descended from the tower, calm as ever. He did not boast or seek recognition. He gave a small nod to the captain. "The palace is safe," he said simply. The other guards, once skeptical and mocking, now looked at him with quiet respect and gratitude. Bren finally found his voice. I misjudged you. You are not just a guard, you are more than that." Aaron smiled faintly. "I only do my duty," he replied. Duty had always guided him more than pride, more than recognition. The men around him began to understand that true skill was not for showing off, but for protecting others. Captain Rovan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your past may remain a secret, but your presence here has proven its worth. The kingdom is lucky to have you." Aaron nodded, looking toward the city. Shadows still lingered beyond the walls, and danger could return, but for now the palace stood protected. As dawn broke, painting the sky with soft gold, Aaron returned to his post. The city awoke, unaware of how close it had come to disaster. The guards, now respectful and cautious, moved among the streets with renewed confidence. The man they had once mocked at the shooting range had shown them what true courage and skill looked like. Aaron stood silently on the wall, scanning the horizon. His past as the SAS's deadliest sniper remained hidden, but it no longer mattered. What mattered was the present, the lives he had protected and the peace he had preserved. For Aaron, the mask of the ordinary guard had served its purpose, but now he had shown that even in silence, a single man could change the fate of many. The palace was safe, the threat repelled, and a quiet legend had been born among the guards. And Aaron, the once mocked guard, remained as calm as ever, ready for whatever challenge would come next.